And welcome, Angelinos! We thank you for tuning in to yet another brilliant episode of the Galaxy Guy podcast, hosted by Chris Maldonado, a show made by loyal Galaxy fans for loyal Galaxy fans who bleed blue, white, and gold. So join us as we talk about the ins and outs, as well as the ups and downs of your favourite team, the one and only, the Los Angeles Galaxy.
Hola y bienvenidos, Angelinos. Welcome back, Galaxy fans, to the Galaxy Guy podcast. Como siempre, as always, I'm your host, Chris Maldonado. And tonight, and I do say tonight because this show is being recorded just after the LA Galaxy's 3-0 loss versus the Seattle Sounders in Seattle. Their very first loss of the season, unfortunately. But it's going to be a great post-game show, I can tell you that. We will be providing you an in-depth post-game analysis, stat breakdown as usual. And as always, we will be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the game. Now, to help me do all of that and make some sense out of all of this, I've got with me the man with the facts, Mr. Matt Granger. And joining us also is our very own French liaison, Mr. Nate Doty. Bonjour, Nate.
How are you guys doing?
How are you guys doing tonight, man?
We're going to stay positive. It's a learning experience. We all had anticipating this game, and let's talk about it. How you feeling, Matt?
I feel like the audience must have felt to the band that was playing when the Titanic sank. I'm a little heartbroken, but it's okay. It's natural. I'm accepting of it. Let's move on. Let's get in that water.
That's a very good way to describe this game, like the sinking of the Titanic. It definitely felt that way. Felt like the old couple in the end as the rooms are flooded. But listen, it's great having both of you on tonight. I know we are recording this fairly late into the night, later than usual. In order to get this video edited and posted on Monday morning, which is when most people expect to see the show. So again, guys, I truly do appreciate the effort, but I do have some bad news for you guys. I will not be paying you guys overtime for this. So sorry.
It's a thankless job. It's a thankless job. It really is.
Can't even get us press passes, nothing.
Only Guessman's co-hosts get paid.
Oh, that's right. They get private jets. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on an Uber for you guys. But okay. So first, few things before we begin. I just want to remind the viewers quickly to subscribe to the channel, give the video a quick like. It takes 2 seconds. I promise I won't spam your notifications. And also, this week. I will be doing a pregame show this week alongside Eli Lesser, the host of This Week in MLS. Fantastic guy, knowledgeable in everything MLS. I couldn't think of anyone better to bring on for a pre El Tráfico game show. So I'll be having him on in preparation for that upcoming match, LAFC versus the Galaxy. We'll be getting you guys ready for that match by providing you analysis, an overview of the strengths and weaknesses of each team, and we'll also be getting you extra hype for that game. So stay tuned for that video around middle of the week. But without further ado, guys, let's get into the meat of the sandwich. And what do you guys say we talk about some LA Galaxy?
Do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. All right, great. Let's do it. So first of all, we have to talk about that starting lineup, right? I don't know if you guys saw the same match as I did, but I was extremely surprised to see that starting lineup. First thing that really stuck out was Julian Araujo being played as a right winger. O'Neal Fisher slotting in that right back position for him. And we had Efrain Alvarez in the starting lineup over Adam Saldana, who started the first 2 games. I don't know. What was your take on this when you saw this starting lineup, Matt? What did you think?
Well, right off the bat, I thought to myself, okay, well, we're gonna swing big and we're gonna try to win this game. Right off the get. I think when I looked at the back line, I thought to myself, okay, Williams, that makes sense, right? Because you can't. He's ready to play, at least in Vanny's eyes, health wise. You can't start him in this first game against LAFC. So if you're going to play him, you have to play him against Seattle. So I understood why he tried to start him. He went with it. It was either you play him now and then you play him against LAFC, or you don't play him at all in the next 2 games.
Right.
And then when I saw Efra in the lineup, I thought to myself, like, okay, we're just going to go all offense, and we just clearly don't care about defense. Because that lineup was built to be offensive. And I kind of get it after watching last year's game, in which Nico Ladero came in late and then turned around the game and ended up, I think, believing tying it. I thought, okay, he's going to try to play that strategy where he's just trying to get as many goals as he can off the get. But overall, pretty surprised, given that, Williams hadn't played a lot and Efra really hadn't played that many minutes either. It seemed a bit disjointed and risky, but, you take your swing against the contenders, you do it.
I had the exact same thought when I saw the lineup, and I said it because I watched the game with Gio Garcia from LA Soccer Hub. I watched it over at his place, and I turned to him and I said the same thing. I said, this is an offensive lineup. Greg Vanny is going for the win. This isn't a defensive lineup at all. You had Efrain Alvarez and you had Julian Araujo on the right wing. We've seen him play there before. What were your thoughts on this, Nate? When you saw this lineup, you saw Derek Williams in there over Dupuy, who's been fantastic so far. What were your thoughts?
I looked at it and I said, it can work. It can work if it links. If it links up, good. And, unfortunately, that really didn't manifest itself. I had a lot of hope. I had a lot of hope for Alvarez and Araujo. And it just there was not too many bright highlights. And honestly, the fight could be, the fight is a split decision for me between who really had the worst game between the two of them.
Right.
And it was an offensive. It was offensive minded from the beginning. We were having good pressure. We were doing the right things, and it worked for a little bit. But I didn't think, and we talked about this last week and the week before that. I didn't think Adam Saldana was terrible, but he also wasn't good, right? So it didn't surprise me to see Efra Alvarez start. It obviously didn't work, and Vanny admitted to that around halftime. He said, listen, I tried this, it didn't work. He owned up to it, and he made the changes, right? Derek Williams was definitely not ready to start. He's still not completely match fit. That comes with playing games, which he hasn't done so far. He had to be subbed off in the middle, halfway through. We saw Efrain Alvarez come off, and it seemed to completely change the game as soon as these guys came off, and we saw Subak come in there, right? It gave that spark to the offense like we've seen it before. But let's talk about some of those stats, okay? Because this game on paper is completely different than the game we saw, right? You have, for example, possession. The LA Galaxy actually outpossessed Seattle in this game, 53% to 47%. I didn't see that on the field. I don't know if you guys saw a completely different game than I. I saw an LA Galaxy that got outplayed and couldn't. They really weren't holding on to the ball very long. This was a Seattle Sounders team that really just moved the ball around the LA Galaxy, especially in that last half when it really seemed like the Galaxy was gassed. But you look at accurate passes, right? You look at that's my surprise stat of the evening. We had more accurate passes than Seattle, and absolutely nothing to show for it.
Right,
and I think what it means by 80% accurate passes is that means we get to be accurate in the first 80% of the field, but we don't get to be accurate in the last 20% of the field.
That's right. And I was about to say that. Matt, we've talked about this before. The LA Galaxy just doesn't seem to be able to do anything with that possession. We talked about this last time. They were just absorbing
pressure and like you can have 100% accurate passes, right? You can have far more accurate passes than the other team, but if you're not doing anything with these passes, it's nothing. What really matters is the following stat, which is the shots, right?
Mhm.
Seattle had 17 total shots to the LA Galaxy's 10. Now here's the thing, shots on target. Seattle had 9 shots on target. 9, whereas the LA Galaxy had 2. One of those came from a defender, which is very sad to think about, but that's the current state of the LA Galaxy's offense, right? Um, it just, you look down the list, the LA Galaxy got outplayed in all of the key stats. Um, I don't know. What was your take on this, Matt? I mean, you saw the stats yourself. You saw the game. What's the difference?
It's funny you say that about the stats about the Galaxy outpossessing Seattle, because I was talking to my wife and we were watching, and my in-law, when we were watching the game, and I was saying that, like, well, I'll just go over the 2 goals real quick and then I'll get to my point. So both goals are, like, to me at least, they come off as like communication blunders, right? Like on one of them, was this the first goal that O'Neill gets behind? Yeah, the person gets behind O'Neill Fisher, right? And he sends an across, and Williams and Villafana are running, and they end up tracking the same player. And what does Ruidíaz does? He just stands still because he knows, like, the communication not there, and he bangs one in, right? Pure miscommunication. And that's probably going to come with time where they're going to get on the same page. But that's just like another illustration of, like, maybe this wasn't the game to play a new center back against one of, like, probably like the top 2 strikers in the league over like the last 5 years.
For sure.
Right. And then you get to the second goal, right? And it's essentially like the same play all over again, but just coming the other way. They cross the ball. Williams sticks out a foot. He misses it, right? Fisher, who had just a god-awful game the entire game, and he had dominated the last 2 games, so I was really excited to see him start at right back. But Fisher is not marking anyone. He's just marking, like, empty back post, right? And, like, okay, so he's just there. So forget it. So he messed that one up, right? But Araujo is also, like, in the area on the guy who's about to score, and he still could have got a foot on it. And
Right.
instead he just slips, right? And it was just like, that was like the beginning of, like, a comedy of errors that would, like, follow Araujo the whole game.
It seemed that way. It really did seem that way. Now, let me ask you guys, and Nate, I'll ask you first. Who do we blame for those 3 goals? Do we blame those 3 goals on the midfield? Do we blame those goals on the defense? Or do we blame that on the goalkeeper? Or is it a combination of all 3? Who's the biggest culprit here?
I felt like all 3 goals we were caught sleeping, and so I feel like it's always a one-on-one situation where somebody is sleeping, somebody is not paying attention, somebody's not focused at 100% on the game, and it's those little mind mistakes that add up. And I mean, the second goal was, to me, the first goal was a typical kind of a Galaxy goal where you're like, oh, well, we let one in just like that, of course, with our defense. The second one, to me, was the oddity. We're like, okay, we so soon on the same thing, we didn't learn anything, and no one really refocused. I really like Vanny, and I know it doesn't work out 100% all the time. There's a lot of things here we can talk. I'm not the coach. I don't know what he sees during practice. I go with his lineup, but that second goal was just preventable, and I think that really would have changed the game. You don't let that second one in, but
the game was still within reach. I mean,
but it was individual lapses of focus that got us in those situations.
So far, the LA Galaxy through 3 games has allowed 7 goals. 7 goals in 3 games. And to be completely honest, this game could have really been a lot worse than it was. There was that goal that literally went off the woodwork, and they had to VAR that, right? As the play continued, they had to VAR that to confirm that the ball didn't go in. But uh, Seattle could have easily gone away and scored at least 4, if not 5 goals this game. And the Galaxy's defense looked a lot like it did back in, well, the last couple of years, right? There was just a lot of sleepiness out there, like Nate said, a lot of players that were just taking naps out there, and a lot of errors, very, very simple errors. I mean, that first goal, and I turned to Gio and I said it, and I said, why would you leave Rui Diaz unmarked in the box? This guy is an animal. He's a pit bull. Like, you do not leave this guy unmarked inside your box, and yet there he was. He just casually put that ball in the back of the net. Easy as that, right? So
I don't know how else to describe it. I respect Rui Diaz, but I hate him. I respect him because that's what he does. But I just,
he's a phenomenal player. And it's like Matt said, easily in the top 2, if not the best, arguably the best striker in the league when Joseph is not healthy and as chubby as he is nowadays, What were you about to say, Matt?
And then just to take a stab at the question that you posed, Nate, I think it's all three of their fault. I think it's Vanny's fault. I think he started a lineup that wasn't ready to play the Western Conference champions. He took a risk and he missed, and that's going to happen, right? I mean, he tried, whatever, right. It didn't work out. I think it's the back line's fault. There was a lot of miscommunication. Obviously, Williams comes in, and then no one knows who's in charge, right? Mm-hmm. No one's communicating. This maybe Steros backs down a little bit, thinking, "Oh, this is the new man," so to speak. Right. And then finally, like, it may have not those goals may have not directly been on the midfield, but like the entire game is like on the midfield yet again, right? And I'll get that in the good, bad, and the ugly. But like, man, if there has been like a reoccurring issue for the Galaxy, it is like the lack of midfield. They are just more absent than the kid who misses the first day of school every year.
And you look at the stats for the midfielders. I mean, Jonathan Dos Santos on paper had a pretty decent game. He had a 92% pass success rate. He didn't really do much in the offense, but he had some recoveries. He had about a dozen recoveries in the midfield, but he just looks so average out there, and that's the problem. You cannot have a designated player out there that looks average and plays average. So if anything, I thought the midfield got overrun and they got burned throughout that entire game. Seattle outplayed us in every position, right? You look at guys like the Brazilian guy that they brought in. He's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal midfielder. Roldan did his thing with the midfield. He manhandled us. Rui Diaz manhandled us. There was a point in there where even I think he went 1v1 versus Nick Dupuy, who's like 6'4", 6'5", and Rui Diaz is like, what, 5 feet tall? And he outmanned him, and he bullied him off the ball. We just got outplayed, and I think it just shows that we're mortal,
I don't know as much if they. I mean, you're right. You're correct. I think in the offense, Seattle's offense outplayed us fairly consistently. But for the midfield, I don't know as much as if we were outplayed or if we were just out of sync, and Seattle used it. Versus we were. I don't think we were trying our best. I don't think we were really I don't think they were really giving an honest effort. I don't know how to describe it. They were trying to make passes that didn't build anything, and I just don't know if something was off or what, the lineup maybe. But I think they were more out of sync than Seattle was dominant.
That's true, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, further on in the episode. But let's move on now to the section of the show that we call the good, the bad, and the ugly. Of course, we have to start with the good. This is going to be very short because I don't think that we saw much good out there. But let's start off with the good. Matt, what did you see out there from this LA Galaxy team that you thought was good?
The game ended. Go ahead, Nate. You can take it.
Nate, what do you think? Did you see anything out there that you thought, okay, this LA Galaxy team did this right? They did. It was good.
Jonathan Bond is a good signing. That's really my only takeaway of the game was that he let a few in. One was on. He had no support. They were sleeping. The second one was on a rebound.
Yeah.
The third one was just to show that Seattle doesn't let up, and neither should we. And we were caught sleeping again. Those late Galaxy goals are just crazy. I mean, like we didn't care about that one.
I agree. I agree with you, Nate. I would say Jonathan Bond. Listen, it's 7 goals in 3 games, right? And if you see that on paper, you say to yourself, that's a terrible goalkeeper. He allowed 7 goals. But
how many saves? How many saves has he done?
He had 6 saves this game. 4 of them were diving saves, which are always harder to make. Listen, don't let those goals reflect poorly on Jonathan Bond because, like you said, those goals were mostly out of his control. He didn't have the support. That third goal, it's really hard as a goalkeeper to stop a 2v1 attack, right? Because that's essentially what it was. Both of the Seattle attackers were alone, basically. The Galaxy defense was about 3 or 4 steps behind them. Jonathan Bond is in a situation where he's split between 2 Seattle players. Most goalkeepers won't stop that, right? So we have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Everything else that we've seen from him, he's making the saves that he has to make, and he's making them in really good fashion. So I would agree Jonathan Bond continues to be good. The defense, not so much. The midfield, not so much. So I can agree with you on that, Nate. That was one of the good things of the match to see him make those saves. But I don't think there really is much more to talk about as far as that's concerned. So let's talk about something that's going to really get us going. Let's talk about the bad, shall we? Moving on to the bad. Obviously, we lost. The midfield was overrun almost the entire match. It's now 7 goals in 3 games. What else can we say that was bad about this game? Nate, what would you say that you saw in this game that was just bad?
Hindsight's always 2020, so it's really the lineup. And it was unprepared, but it was a swing, and it looked promising in the first 15-20 minutes. We managed to get pretty close. We were playing them pretty high, and it just fizzled out. Half on the coach, half on the performance of the team, I want to say, because it still didn't really show any grit at all.
Yeah. Matt, what did you see in this game that you thought was bad, horrendous?
I mean, obviously the back line was bad. O'Neil Fisher was bad, but I kind of put that more on the coach more than anything. I guess I'd really just touch on the midfield, including Grand Sir. Only because it's been such a recurring issue with the Galaxy in all the games, whether we've won the game or in this case we've lost the game, right? It just seems like I said before, like our midfield isn't a stopper, like at all, right? It doesn't matter if it's Saldana who will foul a guy, but then you make that trade off with effort, right? So Saldana, I think Doyle had an article where Saldana has like an 80 something crazy, like an 89% like success rate with passing, right? But Doyle was only able to like locate like I think 1 or 2 passes that were actually forward. Like that's ultimately like people are going to attack you, and that's what led to his turnovers, right? So we bring in effort, right? But then what does effort give you? Like effort like just lacks defense. Like he doesn't know how to play defense. If the ball's not at his foot, he's just lost in the field. And when he does have to man up a guy, like this guy's like boxing some guy out like he's playing power forward. You know what I mean? Like he's legitimately that lost out there. Yeah. But his passes some forward sometimes are pretty good. But overall, like the defense is just like it is just like butter. It's terrible, right? And not only is it like terrible defensively, it lacks like coordinated effort, right? So like all I've heard for like 4 years now is like General Jonah Dos Santos. Jonah's the captain. Jonah's in charge, right? Well, like, who's in charge here? Like, who's organizing this midfield? Who is like putting together a concerted formation effort there, right? Like, I don't blame Victor Vasquez. Victor Vasquez is basically out there like doing Grandsir's job for him, because Grandsir, even though he played better today, like he only played better for a like short spurt of time, and then he was a ghost the rest of the game. Like, Grandsir is essentially like, when you start like FIFA career and you have like player A, like that's Grandsir. Like, maybe you'll score with player A every now and again, but for the most part, like, you cannot depend on that guy to do anything.
Yeah.
And the thing that frustrates me is like, I've heard like other people on like the Reddit or like the podcast where I'd be like, we've got to get this guy in dangerous positions. Like, we brought this guy to create the dangerous position. It's so infuriating. So like, until the midfield fixes itself, like, we are going to continue to fail no matter who we put in that back line, because ultimately, like, we cannot play defense where like 4 players who are not very good to begin with are playing panic defense, and then there's a trailer coming and our defense is jogging back. Right. It's just unsustainable.
That's quite the breakdown there, Matt. I don't blame you for ranting, dude. I think you were spot on just about everything you said. Samuel Grandsir has no excuse really now at this point for being as transparent as he has been. And he had a really, really good chance this game, a phenomenal chance. We talked about it before we hit record. I talked about it with Gio when we were watching it at his place. He should have made that. He should have scored that goal. It could have been as easy as chipping the ball over to Stephen Fry. He didn't do it. He went straight to body. It was an easy save. I don't know, but Nate, it really did sound like you had something to say there as Matt was speaking.
So, as a compatriot, I feel bad for Grandsir, because I wonder if he really gets what he's supposed to be doing. I'm sure he gets he's supposed to be creating chances. He's a forward. He gets that, right? But how much English does he speak? I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the scene from Lost in Translation where the photograph is talking to Bill Murray and he like speaks for like 30 seconds and the translation is just like, just act more natural. And you're like, no, something gets lost here. So I don't know if something gets lost in the tactical aspect of what he's supposed to be, where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there.
Nate, I'm
not
glad.
And defense for him, but I have a legitimate question of like, does this guy really speaks? He understands soccer, but if he speaks the language,
you might be onto something, because we just had a press conference this week where Sasha Kleshton basically said, I am Samuel's translator in this team because he doesn't really speak much English, and Sasha's basically the only one in the team that speaks French. So, and he made a joke about it. He said, I'm going to send an invoice to Chris Klein and charge him for the translator services. But you might actually be onto something there, Nate. It might be a communication of an issue with communication between Samuel and his teammates, because it's definitely, he looks a little lost out there, and it might be because of the difference in language. So who knows? It might help when he gets more of his French compatriots on the team, right? We're still waiting for Koulibaly. We're waiting for Kevin Cabral, who, by the way, will not be available for the LAFC game. I'm sorry to break some hearts out there, but he still hasn't received his visa. Greg Vanny said during our last press conference this week, he said there was an error. It was a clerical error with the during the visa process, and basically had to readmit the visa. So he might not be coming until Monday. That's, when the show comes out, or Tuesday, which means he still has to go through quarantine. He won't be available, but I don't know. That might be an issue, the French. But a couple of the other bad, you guys mentioned Jonathan Dos Santos. Matt, you mentioned him. Listen, it's MLS, right? In MLS, you can't be successful unless your DPs are just full blast on all cylinders, right? And so far, what we've seen throughout these 3 games is that Jonathan Dos Santos is not that player. He's not firing on all cylinders. He's definitely lost a step or two. It's very noticeable, and I don't think he's the DP that we need. We definitely don't need. We're essentially wasting a DP spot, right? And it's so crucial in MLS to have all three DPs on the same page in order to be successful. So I don't know. Aside from that, those were really the bad things I saw in the game. We obviously have to talk about the ugly, right? And I'll start with that. This match really was a measuring stick for the Galaxy. So far, the last two games we played against very weak opponents. The first two matches, Inter Miami was a weak opponent. They were a dumpster fire team last season. This season, they're just starting to find an identity. They didn't play a preseason. The Red Bulls are a complete mess this season. It was a measuring stick for us, and it's like a reality check. Okay, this is our reality check. Galaxy fans, I know it sucks to hear, and I know it's a very tough pill to swallow, but this is our reality check. The LA Galaxy is really not that good as we thought those first two games. It still has a hell of a long way to go before it's a complete team. That's my ugly take on that. And one more thing, Jonathan Bond had 49 total touches the entire game. Javier Chicharito Hernandez had 32 total touches the entire game. Service and offensive creativity is really, really bad when your goalkeeper has far more touches than your starting striker. This team struggled big time to create dangerous chances. Heck, they struggled to create chances alone, right? So just a couple ugly things that I saw. I'm sure there's a lot more. What did you guys think? What was ugly about this game?
Oh, okay. So I have two. First one was Araujo. He was awful, and I know Kevin on the last podcast said he's been promised to a European team, but honestly, if he's going to play like this, he might as well like unpack his bags, because I'm fully vaccinated. I will be in Europe before he will, guaranteed. If he continues to play like this, he has just been so poor. And we had talked about this, and I think the first podcast I did with you, Chris, where I had said, like, look, this guy has been shell-shocked from Mexico. He got worked by some like real talent, and some talent he knew in Antuna, right? And Antuna, who has progressed since he left the Galaxy, Araujo maybe, found his line, and he didn't break through that line. And then we had said, like, okay, like, what are you going to do now that you're the man, right? Now that LA Times is writing about you, now that everyone's buying your jersey, now that everyone's got big expectations for you, Europe's calling, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to shrink? Or are you going to grow from it, right? And I think we're kind of starting to see what's going to happen. Not that he can't break out of it, but ultimately, as it is now, like, he's not going anywhere. And G-Man in our Discord actually brought it up even before he started just getting, rinsed like laundry, that he's not a top 5 defender in MLS. So there's no reason to believe that he was going to just land himself on Juventus or Tottenham, right? Sure. So I think that's my ugly, is just the reality that Araujo's coming to terms with, that maybe he needs to get his head right or put the work in, or just fix himself at this point. And the second ugly would be, he wasn't even in the game, Sebastian Lletget. Okay. And, I'm hard on Sebastian Lletget, as anyone from Reddit knows. I have the opinion that his mentality is softer than all the Charmin I hoarded during COVID. But like, we need him. He's arguably our best player, and like, this guy's like habitual need to be on social media and then put his foot in his mouth. Like, luckily we won the last game, but a game like this, like, we lost, and we could have used him today, right? Like, we need that veteran, like, MLS all-star US national player in the middle, and he just wasn't there. And he wasn't there because of his own actions, which is the most frustrating part about it, right? Like, this wasn't like a gotcha moment. He put this out there on his own, and I think, like, even though Seb wasn't there today, like, that's the problem, right? And that's why, like, it's part of my ugly, because ultimately, like, we needed him today and he wasn't there by no other doing than just his own. So that'll go to my ugly.
I can agree with those. Nate, what do you think? Nate, what are you thinking? What did you think about this game that was ugly?
I think we've covered, I think, a lot of things, and we're going to covering them. So my two uglies were really obvious. I turn on the TV, turf. That's ugly. And then you get a close up of the Seattle jerseys. That's ugly.
Whatever color that is, like a plum purple.
It's a tribute to Jimi Hendrix. Poor Jimmy. Poor Jimmy. I have a poster of Jimi Hendrix right now. Like he's not happy, man. This is not a righteous tribute anyway. So I think as far as the Galaxy, a 3-0 loss is hopefully as ugly as it gets this season. Hopefully you learn from this, because like I said, I put half and half on the coach and lineup on the selection, and half on the performance of the players.
Right.
It's really, I really wish we could combine all the good trait of Alvarez and Aro. So then you get a really guys that has an edge, that can really fight for the ball, that has a good touch and a good vision. Instead, it's split in two, and one is kind of slow but has a good vision, and the other one has an edge but has a bad touch. And you're kind of splitting your talent, where you'd hope that by the time they get to that stage, 18, 19, they become a whole player. They grow those extra, like a pitcher. You learn those extra pitches that is going to allow you to have some longevity and in the game and in your career. But right now, I just don't see it.
Listen, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel for the LA Galaxy this season, right? Because it's not a complete roster yet. We are waiting on at least two players that we know of that are signed to the team. That's Kevin Cabral, who's a DP. He's going to be an offensive piece. A lot of hype behind him, and we have a defensive guy coming as well, center back Sega Koulibaly. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. This LA Galaxy still has maybe one more signing left in the tank before this transfer window closes. And I can guarantee there will be more signings in the summer because we've heard as much from Klein and Vanny, right? So not a complete team yet. We have players coming. We have guys like Derek Williams. I mean, we saw him today. We can't be too harsh on the guy. He hasn't played in several months. He had a severe injury to his quad. It's his first time playing on turf. So we can't be too hard on him. Hopefully he'll turn it around. He'll come back. He'll get strong. He'll get match fit. And he'll be that center back that we desperately need. As far as that's concerned, light at the end of the tunnel. We can't be too harsh on the guys. Next week is going to be a test as well, a challenging test. LAFC hasn't been firing on all cylinders yet. They did tie 1-1 against Houston in Houston. I mean, not the hardest of opponents, right? They struggled a bit. They tied Seattle at home. They won their first game against, was it Austin? Yes, Austin. So they're not that same LAFC we've seen in the last couple of seasons where they're like ready to go straight at the start of the season and they're just, doing their thing. But it's El Trafico, right? And we know one thing about LAFC is that they show up for this game, right? It's going to be a true tough test for the LA Galaxy. And a reminder to the viewers out there, I will be having a specific pregame show for that this midweek with Eli Lesser from This Week in MLS. But let's talk briefly about that game, guys. How excited are you guys for next week's game?
Do you have the lineup for it?
Unfortunately, Kevin Cabral won't be in that lineup. And I know everyone really wanted to see him in the lineup, but we're basically going to field the players that we've been fielding the last couple of weeks.
Leget's coming back, right?
Leggett is coming back. That's right. Leggett is coming back. He just played the game against Miami and then was obviously suspended by the league. 2 games. That was the Red Bulls game and the Seattle game. He will be back in the lineup for the LAFC game. I don't know. I speak for myself, I guess, when I say this, but I'm super excited about the game. Cautiously optimistic. I think we can get that win at home. I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
I'm really pumped for the game. I love games like this. I think having played sports when I was younger, like I'm sure you two did. I think the games that matter the most, like you always wish you had more of them, right? It's one thing to be nervous, but like at the end of the day, like these are the ones you get up for, these are the ones you live for. And same thing as a fan, right? Whenever you go to see a game, as a fan, whether it's like baseball or soccer, domestic, MLS or European League or Champions League, you want to see the biggest games. And for the MLS and regionally for Los Angeles, like this is the big game to play. So I'm really pumped up. It's one of those things where no matter how good LAFC has been playing at the time or how good we've been playing at the time, like you can almost throw like everything out the window because everyone just plays like at a different level. Like there's so many chaotic things that have happened from, Zlatan's debut to, Zlatan's natural hat trick to Horta like giving the ball away at like midfield and Kamara like taking it the distance coast to coast. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those games where like really anything can happen. And I really feel like to your point, Chris, like LAFC is not like LAFC 2 years ago. Like they're susceptible. They're good. They're not great. They're still playing the same style. They're just not great at it. They try to show up some things, but in the interim, from having been further away from their expansion, they've had to adjust the MLS rules. And because of that, their roster has gone from like this like really top level roster to like Atlanta, right? Like they've had to pull back and adjust. And naturally, they don't have this big gap that they had before. So I think this is a total winnable game for us. It's always a winnable game, but realistically, it's a total winnable game. And I think I'm going to turn this Sebastian Lletget ship around here and say, after having served a suspension, Sebastian Lletget's going to come back on fire. Like when Sebastian Lletget like just completely embarrassed himself by acting like an AYSO like crybaby was Lon. He came back in 2020 and probably was like the only guy who had like a respectable season. He was doing assists, he was banging in goals all the time, he was hitting bicycle kicks. I expect that same Sebastian Lletget to come back from the suspension and just dominate the game. And I think we're going to thrive on that ultimately. I saw the LAFC game. There's a couple of things that we can do to kind of mitigate their strengths. But ultimately, like I'm very pumped for it. I'm really excited to be there. And hopefully it's good weather because I'll be out there with sunscreen.
I will also be at the game, so hopefully I will speak with you guys there.
I'll look for you guys on TV. I will not be making that game.
I will be the one streaking down the middle of the field at halftime.
That's my job. Come on.
Now listen, it's gonna be good, right? It's Matt, to your point, Sebastian Lletget really does need to show up big in this game. And he has done it before during El Tráfico games, right? So let's hope that the LA Galaxy took some lessons from this Seattle game, because I feel like it maybe, I mean, for the players and the fans, right? Because we were riding high on those first 2 wins, and a lot of people were saying, listen, we're cup contenders, right? So like I said earlier, this was a big reality check, and it maybe brought us back down to earth a little bit. So in a sense, it's good that we played Seattle first, maybe got that out of the way, got our punches in, right? So now we know, okay, listen, this is where we're at. Now we come into the LAFC game knowing that, hey, listen, we're not all that. We come in with a more realistic expectation, and they could play a better game, I think. I think that you don't mess with the lineup like Vanny did this time around, and that just comes to show Greg Vanny's not infallible. He's not perfect. I know some people out there they just cover their ears and go, la, 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 Greg Vanny's perfect. He can't make any mistakes. But listen, the guy can make mistakes, and he showed that tonight. And
if you're gonna take a chance, take it against Seattle. I mean,
I agree.
you want to make sure that you get Miami under your belt. You want to get the East Coast team under your belt. You want to get the home games under your belt. You're going to play the Western champ at their house on turf. Honestly, the lineup, when the lineup came out, you're like, okay, we're doing this. We're doing this and this little thing,
Yeah.
which is okay. Like I said, the intent was there. They almost got a punch in at the very beginning, but that quick counter, we got sucker punched on that, and it kind of really changed the game for us. And we allowed two back to back, and after that was we were just trying to maintain. Seattle didn't even have to park the bus, and they still scored one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, another measuring stick for us, the
Yes.
LAFC game.
No, that's why you don't you don't tweak too much. You play your strength at home, and you hope the fans show up as well.
Yeah. And we get these games out of the way, we'll know exactly where the LA Galaxy sit for the rest of the season, right? Because let's face it, Seattle and LAFC are the toughest opponents in the West. And we can kind of disregard all the other teams after that, right? Because we get this out of the way and we know where we stand. But listen, guys, I think we pretty much covered everything as far as the Seattle game is concerned. We touched briefly on our next week's game, which is against LAFC. I will be touching on that further this week. Midweek, I'll have a show out then. But I think that about does it. Right, guys? I know you guys are half asleep at this point. Again, I do appreciate that you guys stayed up this late.
Actually, I just want to hear Matt's take on Alvarez real quick. 'Cause
Oh boy. Okay. So
you got 30 seconds.
I got 30 seconds. Okay. So Alvarez is one of those players like Alvarez giveth and then Alvarez taketh, right? like Alvarez, he can pay like that pass to Grandsir was so pretty, and Alvarez kind of grew into the game. He had a couple of good passes, but Alvarez had a lot of turnovers too, and Alvarez like doesn't play defense. Like without the ball, he's just like lost out there, right? And I don't I don't know that this is the team that Alvarez can grow the most on. I think at the Galaxy, you're expected. I mean, even this year, right? And I'll circle back to this. Even this year, like you're expected to win, right? Like no one's okay. Like if you had told me like the first three games, like oh we tied, I'd be like okay, well that kind of makes sense. But I'm disappointed. Like the Galaxy is just not one of those teams that you like develop on, right? Like any person who watches like F1, for example, you have Red Bull, and then you have I don't know whatever their sub team is, like Rosotari or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Like the Galaxy is the Red Bull. We need to send Alvarez to like whatever the next level is, whether it's like Dallas or just like a smaller team where he get more minutes, like maybe even like a Houston, but he cannot like grow here, right? Like the Galaxy's expectation is just it's just too high. And ultimately he's gonna get lost. He's gonna get lost like Conrad is getting lost at Barca, right? Like Conrad's a good player. He's got a lot of talent. But unfortunately, like Trincão's in front of him. So what do you do with him? You got to move him on, right? You had to move on like Alanya. Like you just have to move these players on so that they can develop and hopefully become something you think they're going to be later. I think Alvarez has value. I just don't think Alvarez has grown into like his like game as much. And I think you can see it most when he tries to play defense, right? Because like not only does he not know how to defend, and like when I made that joke earlier about him playing like a basketball player, but also like he doesn't like drop his shoulder into people, right? He doesn't like when he goes in, he halts himself as if like my wife said, he halts himself like as if he's trying not to get injured. Like you could not play halfway in, halfway out at a professional level, right? Like he needs to go to a place where like they need to grind for every win. And I just think Alvarez is maybe not the person to like grow in the Galaxy sense. Alvarez could probably become better if he went somewhere else and he came back to the Galaxy's finished product in like 2 years,
And
where the
that's
Galaxy were like really humming, right?
that's not a new problem. I mean, we've seen it time and time again with other young prospects that the LA Galaxy's had, right? I mean, you look at guys like Jack McBean. He was a hot young prospect, at a young age, never panned out for the same reason. I mean, how are you going to play Jack McBean over guys like Robbie Keane? against Landon Donovan, or even other guys that were ahead of him, like Jassy Sardes, Jose Villarreal, Mendiola, Oscar Sorto, same thing. Young prospects that, the sky was the limit for these guys. But they ended up floundering because of the expectation, right? So I can agree with you on that. Totally.
Even like a Giassi Zardes, right? Like Giassi Zardes having a phenomenal career now, right? But Giassi Zardes had to leave LA, where like the Galaxy were constantly in crisis, trying to recreate a magic that it had like 4 years earlier, and go develop in a place that wasn't as media driven and wasn't as driven towards this legacy like Columbus. And because he was able to grow and make mistakes out of the spotlight, he became the player he became today, right? Could that have happened at the Galaxy? Personally, I don't think so, because we were trying to play him at right back, right? Like we can't. Like it's just, I just don't.
That
I just,
actually
I just
happened.
It did happen. I saw it. I just think that's kind of what's going on with Efra. Like I said, I'm not ready to say he's a bad player. I just think that this is not really the right team for him. And then to go back to the Galaxy, right? Like obviously, like we got thumped today, right? But like the fans should not be afraid to be confident. The fans should not be afraid to be excited, right? Like we are so much better organized. We have a better coach. Our star player is scoring. Like we have things to work on, but like who doesn't have things to work on in the beginning of the season, right? Like Seattle, in my opinion, like I said it before, and I'll die on this hill, they were ripe for the taking today. And we'll ultimately never know what kind of game we could have had if Vanny had not tried to fix something that wasn't broken, right? So we'll see what happens with LAFC. But ultimately, like Nate said, if you're going to take a risk, like swing at the contender and on an away game. Just go for it, man. Bruce used to do the same thing. He had an away game. He didn't think we were going to win. Throw out all the youngsters out there. Let them get experience. Let them get their butt kicked, Let them grow. Let them understand that, like, this is a big boys game, And that's fine. We tried something. It just didn't work out. But there is no reason why Galaxy fans should not be excited for this year. And don't let this, like, thumping get you down. Because ultimately, like, we're going to go forward from this. We're going to play LAFC. And we're gonna thump the heck out of them. Like that's just it. Like if you go to Bank of America right now, and you look for an MLS Cup, you know where you'll find one? You're gonna find one in the gift shop because they're a bunch of chumps. So go Galaxy, get pumped up, and let's go.
All right. Well, there you go, man. Hey, listen. On that very, very hot, steamy take, we'll end the show on that note. Okay, because that's probably as high a note as we're going to get to during this entire show.
That was awesome, Matt. That was awesome. I love you.
But listen, guys out there, from Chris Maldonado, the Galaxy Guy podcast, my hosts, Matt Granger and Nate Doty, guys, I appreciate it. Again, I remind you guys, subscribe, give me a quick like. It really does help. We'll see you guys midweek. I'll see you guys midweek for that El Trafico pregame hype with Eli Lesser. And hopefully we'll be talking about this game next week. And we'll have very, very good news to talk about. Mostly good, almost no bad, and no uglies, right?
It'll be exciting.
All right, guys. Well, we're signing off. You guys have yourselves a good rest of your week. And we love you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks for having us. Cheers.